rank the top 10 positional groups in all of football. We're going to go through a slideshow and kind of go through each one. We kind of picked our own top 10. We can talk about other potential top 10s that we might have missed, because I'm sure there is some. But we'll do that. I'll let Casey take that over, and we'll kind of talk about each one, starting with the Minnesota Vikings pass catchers.
So, I mean, obviously, this group has the opportunity. Maybe not this year, but definitely in the coming seasons after we see what Jordan Addison becomes, to become one of the top wide receiver rooms in the league. I mean, you got Justin Jefferson. I mean, he already catapults this wide receiver group up to the tippity top of the mountain here. Jordan Addison, I think a lot of us are expecting big things from him. Mike, what are you kind of expecting for a Jordan Addison season 1 stat line?
I think, to be fair, you can't really, at least for me, for a rookie, I don't want to put the expectation of 1,000 yards receiving on him. I just don't think that's fair. I know Olave and Garrett Wilson did it last year, but that's kind of, going against the grain rather than the norm. I expect Addison to get around 900 yards. And the difference will be between what Adam Thielen did last year and what Addison will do. If he's just consistently putting up 50 yards a game, the impact that has is massive, because there was games Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne combined had 50 yards. Like there were some ugly ones. And I know KJ is a decent player, don't get me wrong, but the wide receiver 3, I really do believe is his ceiling. Like, no disrespect, I think he's a very quality player, but there is a ceiling there. Whereas Addison, I think he could be a really high level wide receiver too, if he hits his potential. But I'm going with 900 yards, 6 touchdowns, something like that.
Yeah, me and Jamie were kind of on the thought process that he have what he had his last season at USC, where it was kind of like in the 850 or 850, 860, 6 touchdowns, somewhere around there, which I think would be fair and a very solid season for him, especially
when TJ Hawkinson catches 100 passes.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. And adding that into KJ Osborne, who, as Mike said, I would agree that he's a very solid wide receiver 3. I haven't seen enough from him yet to think he could ever be a wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
But every team needs a really good wide receiver 3, which we'll talk about in the coming slides here, actually. I think one of the better wide receiver 3s that isn't talked about enough. We'll talk with him later on. Jalen Naylor, who, of course, I mean, we hope he could be that speedster, deep threat guy. Then we did toss in some tight ends here. TJ Hawkinson, of course, with what he did with his team last year. With Jordan Addison, I think his role could be even better, especially if Ed Oliver on the other side for tight end gets in there and starts doing some things as well. So this, man, even if like, let's say KJ Osborne leaves this offseason, if you go into next year with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor, if he takes that step, and TJ Hawkinson, watch out.
Yeah.
How dare you guys leave former first-round pick Jalen Reagor off this list? Shame on you guys.
There wasn't enough room. Sorry, Reagor.
I'm kidding.
Make the cut. So that's obviously positional group number 1 on our list.
Yeah.
Here.
Before we move on to the next one, but that's one thing about KJ. I just want to say a couple things. KJ Osborne. One thing that's interesting about him is I just want to see. It just sounds like he's been putting in work this offseason, and especially with getting Jordan Addison and this. There's this chip on KJ Osborne's shoulder that, at least it seems like that. That's what people are trying to make it seem like. So I'm interested to see. I mean, there's a chance I do see KJ Osborne taking a step forward. I don't know if it's going to be a big enough step to be a for sure wide receiver 2, but I do think we see a better KJ Osborne this year than we did last year, which would be huge at a wide receiver 3 spot, I think. And we talked about Jalen Naylor a little earlier. If Jalen Naylor's playing anything like he is in OTAs, which there is no pads, there's nothing like that. And I actually said this in my short that I made was, Jalen Naylor, even though he had 31 passing snaps last season, but he ended up with PFF's second highest grades of all wide receivers, even though 31 snaps, had like 175 yards, a 50-yard touchdown. And I think he had in 31 snaps, he was thrown to 12 times. In 31 passing snaps, he was thrown to 12 times and he caught 9 of them. So, I mean, that's a good sign. That's a good sign for him, even as a route runner, is just getting open. And obviously we've seen his speed. So it's like, even though it's a really small sample size, he took advantage of that sample size as best as you possibly can from anyone that gets that kind of playing time. Like, he's really took advantage of it. So we could have a gem in Jalen Naylor that we don't even know about. And we'll see I know there's going to be tons of hype going into training camp with him. So he's one of the players I'm really going to be paying attention to during training camp, because if he ends up being, one of those hidden gems, imagine if he's a guy that could be a wide receiver 2 in the NFL, or even just that by itself, especially with his speed, is something that I feel like we're missing, is that kind of deep threat specific wide receiver. Especially if you have Jordan Addison kind of playing in slot, you kind of have an open, some room for that type of wide receiver. So I don't know. I'm really excited about Jalen Naylor, obviously. I know Dave is a massive Jalen Naylor fan, but it could be interesting. And that's why I think like his potential, that's what like KJ Osborne potentially being a very high upside wide receiver 3, and Jalen Naylor's potential to even, he could be, who knows what he could be. He could be a wide receiver 2 type potential. And I do think, and then obviously TJ Hawkinson with how good he is. I think we have one hell of a position group here for the Vikings. So we'll see how we rank them at the end of this, but I'm excited about it.
If I can get one last quick point on Jalen Naylor, I upset a lot of people last year, the back end of the season, by saying he didn't get enough snaps. And a lot of people saying, Mike, well, it was all garbage time. How do you know if you don't play him? I love Adam Thielen for everything he did for this franchise. But at the end of the day, he needed to be taken off at times. He should have not been given that many reps. He was, let's just say it as it is, he was basically a wide receiver 3 at that point in his career last season. And Jalen Naylor needed more opportunity. I truly believe that. And I hope it's a strong competition between Osborne and Naylor for wide receiver 3. Don't just give guys a spot because they started that way in training camp and just held on come preseason. You've got to give competition and reps to everybody, and it helps Kirk Cousins because he loves spreading out the ball anyway.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep, and I think we're going to see that, man, especially between KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison. But I think Jalen Naylor's going. I mean, I think they're going to look at him too, and I'm not saying it's going to happen or anything like that. I think I love Jordan Addison. I wanted him in the draft, but like, what if Jalen Naylor goes into training camp and it's not just between Addison and Osborne? There's a real chance it could be Addison, Osborne, and Naylor. I'm taking Addison, but yeah, I don't know. It's a really good situation to have, I think, especially when we were so worried about having a wide receiver 2 going into this offseason.
Absolutely.
I agree. Oh, go ahead.
You're good. And then the next 5 on our list here come from NFL.com's top 5 positional groups. We'll just kind of we'll just kind of buzz through the rest of these here. No need to spend a ton of time on them. The first one that they had was the defensive front of Philadelphia. Now, when free agency started and Hargreaves got picked up and they lost a couple other guys, everyone's like, this Philadelphia defense, they might struggle this year. They lost a lot of bodies in the middle. And then they come into the draft in the first round. They get Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and completely wipe that thought from everybody's mind to go along with Jordan Davis, their first round pick last year, as well as Hassan Reddick. The Eagles, I know a lot of like the other executives in the NFL aren't always happy to hear this. I mean, find me a better GM than Howie Roseman. Like the guy just knows how to draft and pick players. Did you see that rumor about apparently they had a Russell Wilson trade basically ready to go last year and it fell through, and then Jalen Hurts did what he did? Like, they got lucky.
That's where NFL executives could point back and say, hey, Howie Rose was not the greatest thing since sliced bread. He did want Russell Wilson. I will say this. I think Russell Wilson would have been really good on the Eagles. Probably not as good as Hurts, which would have been pretty hilarious if Hurts ended up hitting free agent. Could you imagine the dynamic that would have been? He could have been the greatest free agent quarterback of all time had he hit the market. How things would have been different there. But they did absolutely catch a break there.
And you misspoke. He would have been the second greatest free agent quarterback all time behind Minnesota Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins. But I digress.
Hot take. What does the chat think about that?
Anyway, Eagles defensive front, pretty solid.
The Eagles, I want to also mention they have Fletcher Cox and Josh Sweat as well. So, I mean, they got bodies there, man. They got a hell of a group there.
Yep. We all got to pray for Garrett Bradbury come week 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, chalk that up as an L for me.
Yeah.
So next one they had is the Bengals wide receivers, pass catchers. Who the Bengals will toss him in at the end here. They did bring in Irv Smith Jr. as well, so we'll see if maybe he can catch on there with Joe Burrow. Might be a good shot for him. Jamar Chase, of course, second best LSU wide receiver to come out in the last few years. T. Higgins, a lot of people were thinking that T. Higgins might get traded. Sounds like he's going to stay there for now. If they can find a way to keep him, that'd be solid. And then this is the guy that I want to talk about, Tyler Boyd. I think he's pretty underappreciated. You don't talk about him a lot, but find me a better wide receiver 3 in the league. It's hard to do.
I don't think there is one.
Like Tyler Boyd might be one of those guys on any other team, which he was on this team.
He was a wide receiver 2. He was a wide receiver 1. I would probably say like a lower end wide receiver 1, but he was a wide receiver 1 for them. I mean, he has.
Didn't he catch? Yeah, didn't he catch the big touchdown that sent the Bills in the playoffs all those years ago when they had Tyrod Taylor at quarterback?
Yeah, I think
like
right.
He's a good player that just doesn't get his credit. He'd be a 1,000-yard receiver elsewhere in the proper situation. He honestly would be.
Yeah,
and that's their wide receiver 3. Obviously, their tight end position. Like if you're going to compare him to the Vikings, we got T.J. Hawkinson. They got
Do they still have Hayden Hurst, or was he a free?
No, he left to Carolina.
He did. Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Yep.
Gotcha.
So they got Irvin. I mean, I think Irv is going to have, as long as he stays healthy. I could see him, and your quarterback's Joe Burrow.
Oh, right,
so,
that's the guy to take.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Irv this season, but he could be a sneaky player. He isn't going to be anything like Hawkinson, but he could be a sneaky player this year. So this is one hell of a group.
How many times have we said that though? And I was, honest to God, I was one of the biggest Irv Smith supporters.
Right,
even last year. Man, what an underwhelming run in Minnesota. Like, I know it wasn't all his fault, but at the end of the day, if you can't play, you're not producing. It is what it is. You don't get to use that as a crutch, right? As an excuse.
Right.
Wealth is health.
What did Mike Zimmer say? Can't make the club in the tub or something like that? Was that a Mike Zimmer line? I don't know.
I have no clue.
But anyway, this is a very, very solid wide receiver group. But I mean, Justin Jefferson by himself is better than all of these guys.
So. Yeah, true.
Anyway,
some Bagel fans I have seen some ridiculous stuff on Twitter. There was a tweet I saw today. Someone trying to make out the case that T. Higgins, not even Jamar Chase, T. Higgins is better than Justin Jefferson. Bengal fans are out of their mind. They're out of their mind, man. That's wild.
Couple good seasons, and all of a sudden they're the most arrogant fan base.
Put T. Higgins beside Justin Jefferson. Oh my God. You'd see Justin Jefferson go for 2,000 yards without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Absolutely.
And we're about to see something like that this year with Addison.
I hope so.
Yeah, obviously very solid pass catching group here, but it is what it is. Moving on next, you got the San Francisco 49ers. Now they're great all over the place on defense, but their linebackers, NFL Network said it's harder to find a better duo than Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw back there. So very solid there. Then the Lions offensive line, which we have to go against 2 times this season. And it's not even like now I know the Lions are getting all this media darling hype. But before they got all the hype, everybody knew that they had one of the better offensive lines in the league, straight up. So, because who was Ragnow the guy that the Vikings were looking at in his draft class? I know there was one offensive lineman for the Lions that they're like, oh, the Vikings are
Ragnow. I know definitely had ties to Minnesota in the draft process, and man, how much better of a center he is than Garrett Bradbury. You guys clearly could tell who my favorite player on the Vikings is by leaps and bounds. But anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, solid offensive line.
Dude, they did make the Lions. It's crazy to see how the Lions, like, how they became who they are now. And it really started with them packing up on this offensive line, which is impressive because you don't see that from, like, it's just such an un-Lions thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Matt Stafford loves it, even though he has Super Bowl rings, so he doesn't care too much. But
but Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, top 2 tackle. Top 2 tackles. Top 2 tackle duo in the NFC North, behind, of course, Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw. So, very solid there. And then the secondary for the Miami Dolphins, obviously picking up Jalen Ramsey. Already had Xavier Howard, Javon Holland at safety, and then Cam Smith in the draft. So. Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, like you would pay a lot of money, and they are.
And they are
on Jack Corner.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Absolutely. Then these were the ones that me and Jamie just kind of tossed in here. We got the wide receivers for the Eagles. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and at tight end, they do have Dallas Goedert, who's a very solid tight end. But at AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, that I feel like that's almost what you're hoping you get with Justin Jefferson. I mean, obviously not hoping what you get because you have Justin Jefferson, which is better than AJ Brown. But you're hoping that you get that sort of dynamic with these two.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you got the offensive line.
I know Eagles get
Eagles
3.
well.
It's kind of annoying, but
yeah, but it's a good team right there. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Kelsey's still doing Kelsey things. I believe is this his last season? Did he say? Is it one more run?
He said this before, so who knows? But
yeah,
he's a Hall of Famer. I honestly think Jason Kelsey. I think Travis is too. The two brothers could be Hall of Famers. It's pretty wild. But one thing I do want to touch on about this Eagles outside, there's one player that could be a potential weak spot. The Vikings have a chance, or any team for that matter has a chance to beat them. Attack Cam Jurgens religiously. If you guys remember, I know it's Jordan Davis, but I remember him getting literally shoved 20 yards backwards in Eagles OTAs last year by Jordan Davis. He might not have a great anchor. Just a thought. Maybe there's a little bit of a chink in the armor there with Cam Jurgens, but aside from that, they have a ridiculous offensive line.
Yeah, and then you got Lane Johnson, of course, who's also probably a guy who's looking towards the Hall by the time that's all said and done.
Possibly.
And then wide receivers for the Seahawks, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Now this is this is another sort of the dynamic I really wish the Vikings would have here, where you have like DK Metcalf, who's like the good all around receiver, and then Tyler Lockett, who is just your post route, throwing the ball type of guy. Right. And then you're going to mix in a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's just a route running technician.
Slot technician.
Like you have this is what you hope the Vikings end up with in DK Metcalf, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Nailor is this type of dynamic where JJ's all around, Addison's the route runner guy, and then you got Jalen Nailor who's just going to take the top off the defense. And then, I mean, if you want to keep doing the comparisons, you could have the second best Iowa tight end to be taken in that draft, who was Noah Fant behind TJ Hawkinson.
He's had a very average career. I don't want to, go on him too much. Wasn't he a first round pick? I'm pretty sure he was, right? First rounder. Yeah. Yep. He did not live up to expectations. He's been okay, but that's it.
Yeah. Right. Yep. But could you imagine if this Eagles team pulled off that trade and found a way to get Jalen Hurts in that deal with Philadelphia for Russell Wilson? You imagine Jalen Hurts?
Oh my God. That would.
But anyway,
wild.
This is why with this team, these guys are all young, except for Tyler Lockett, who's getting up there in age now. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like you have Geno, and he's playing well, but with wide receivers like Metcalf and Smith and Jigba, you need to find yourself that next guy at quarterback. So
I do want to randomly touch on this. When I see DK Metcalf and AJ Brown, I can't help myself. Of course, the Vikings are the one team that drafted a bad Ole Miss wide receiver. Because just to suit the narrative.
Yeah. And then more wide receivers. The wide receivers for the Dolphins: Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, another couple guys. I mean, if you look at, Justin Jefferson, if he just had a really good running mate, like I said, having Justin Jefferson puts you up there. But you look at like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. You look at AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. You're looking at a lot of top wide receiver duos in football right now. Like that's pretty nuts what these teams have done there. But yeah, so those are kind of the 10 positional groups that we will be ranking in our tier list here.
Yeah, let's jump over to that. So yeah, we're gonna all right, I got it. So we're gonna start backwards with 10. So of all of these positional groups, which positional group do we think is the worst?
And it's hard to say the worst. I don't even know how you would like.
Well, the worst out of the best.
Would you say it's like the worst or the ones that are gonna have like the least amount of impact on the game? Like that's why like ranking these is gonna be tough. Because obviously, like you look at a team like San Francisco with those linebackers. Like, is that who you would put? Like, there's phenomenal linebackers, but with that position, would you put them at number 10? Like, I guess.
If I had to throw out a shout out, and it's not to say that they're not good, because all these position groups are good, obviously, as we talked about earlier.
Right.
I might give an outside shout out for the Dolphins receivers, and it's not necessarily, or even the Dolphins corners. It's not because they're bad players, but they're both kind of interesting groups where with their corners, Ramsey's older, Xavier Howard's not that young anymore. This was 5 years ago. You might be saying that. But the Dolphins receivers, it's Cedric Wilson at wide receiver 3. If you take Tyreek Hill away, we saw it. If Tua wasn't playing, Jalen Waddle was not very good last season. Not saying he's not good, but he kind of needs Tua to have as much success as he's had. It'd be that those two would come to mind for me. I'd probably prefer the corners for Miami to be number 10.
Number 10.
Okay. That's just me. You guys can, have your opinion.
I agree. I can agree with that. Especially, like, if I was going to say, I think out of all these wide receiver groups, for sure, that we have on here, or pass catchers, whatever, I do think I pick Miami as the worst out of them.
Because
but I agree
they have two really top-end guys.
I'm pretty sure Xavier Howard is definitely getting old.
Yes.
And
weren't they looking to trade him?
Where people said he was he took definitely a step back.
And weren't they looking to trade? Like, wasn't there rumors about the Vikings like getting a package, like trading a package with Delvin where they could have gotten him too? Like, aren't they looking to trade him? Or were they?
From what I've heard and what we all heard from the media, I think it was more in speculation. He did put out a trade request last year, which is why it fueled some rumors because we brought in Flores. He was very close to Brian Flores in Miami, but there was no real concrete trade speculation from the Dolphins side. It was more in Howard wanting to potentially move on.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so putting them down at number 10. Are we thinking? Do we want to go next right with their right in line with their wide receivers going up to number 9?
I think we can.
I know how solid that Eagles offensive line is, but you look at Jason Kelce, you look at Lane Johnson, they're getting older. And as Mike said,
who would you guys pick
isn't that
between
great
the lines? Who would you pick between the Eagles O-line and the Lions O-line?
I would take the Lions O-line for sure. Younger.
I would too because of the age, but I personally would go the Niners linebackers. That's just me though. You guys can obviously, you want to trump me, by all means, feel free.
Yeah, you're the guest on the show, man.
It's tough to say. Like, as much as I want to hope, it's maybe more hope that Cam Jurgens is not going to be very good because we still haven't seen it. I'm just going off of one clip, right? Like it's OTAs. I don't know. I'd go Niners linebackers next, but that's just me.
I think that's fair. For one thing, I mean, if you're talking about impact, positions of impact, like out of all these groups that we have here, I think the linebackers make the least amount of impact. If you have a really good one like Fred Warner, where they're all over the field and they're making plays every way possible, it can be huge. But as far as just from a position of impact, you kind of have to go linebackers would be the least in this, I think.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree too.
We'll go there. And then I feel comfortable. I think I feel comfortable with putting Miami's wide receiver group at 8.
I think that's fair.
That's what I would do personally. But that's just me. Just because they don't have a good wide receiver through. If they had a legitimate scare, even a KJ Osborne wide receiver 3 type, they'd be so much better.
Absolutely, I agree. Yep.
And they don't have a tight end. They don't have a tight end.
No, that's right. They lost Gesicki as well.
Yep.
And they didn't really replace him.
Anyways.
Yeah, it's true.
Didn't replace him, did they? Then at 7, I'm looking at that Eagles offensive line again, just because a couple of their stalwarts are getting a little older. And like I look at all these other ones, and I think that those players have a lot more impact on the game than they do at this point. I mean, obviously, them keeping Jalen Hurts upright, which is important, obviously, but also with the mobility of Jalen Hurts, it's not paramount either. So,
and losing Isaac Salamalu, I mean, it changes the dynamic. Him going to Pittsburgh hurts that offensive line because Eagle fans could just say Cam Jurgens is going to fill in. And though Howie Roseman has drafted offensive linemen as well as anybody, if not probably number 1,
right?
You can make mistakes. Rick Spielman was a great example. You can hit on offensive lineman Brian O'Neill, Chris Darrisaw, and you can also miss Garrett Bradbury and others. But I don't want to, list off all the offensive linemen we've missed on over the years.
Matt Khalil, the biggest.
Oh God!
I know, man. Thank God for Darrisaw,
Yep.
Yeah. Darrisaw is like, pay him too. As we're at it with all these other guys, go and just give Darrisaw a contract.
We got to pay a lot of people. It'll be interesting to see who we can keep. All right, moving on. Number 6. Now, this to me is where it starts to get interesting.
If it was up to me, I would have to go with. I think I'm between out of the rest of the wide receivers. I think, in my opinion, I think the Eagles
I
would
think
be
I
the
think
worst
I
out of
think
this group.
wide receivers should be 1, 2, 3 on this list. I think top three spots should go to wide receivers.
You think so?
Just because
Well,
I
what
think they're that impactful, and just the ones on these lists, it's hard not to put them up there.
I
What do
know
you
that
think?
we're talking about receivers 1, 2, 3, but we can still do that and take out Seattle. And I don't think Seattle's receiving room is as good as the Eagles' defensive line.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think so.
I think
well,
if Tyler Lockett was a couple years younger,
Yes.
we'd have a different conversation here. But now I think you're going to kind of have too much of, like the Vikings have too much of the same here, where you have just two guys that are kind of just route runners, and like, because DK is not really a deep threat type of guy,
he
he
can be
do
though.
it. Yeah, he can.
Definitely
So can
can
JJ,
be.
but he's not like, that's not what he's known for. He's
Right,
kind of
like Tyler
one of those
Lockett.
all around guys.
And no offense, not a game-changing tight end either.
No.
He's really not.
Right.
No,
And
he's not
JSN,
at
we
all.
don't know what JSN is going to be at this point. I think he's going to be phenomenal at what they're going to be
Yes.
asking him to
Yeah.
do within
I
the
like-
confines of that offense. But
And Godaire's a really good tight end. He's not. He's not like.
absolutely.
I still don't think he ever became what he was supposed to be. I think he was drafted in the first round, right?
No offense. Or are we talking about Goddard?
No, Godaire.
Goddard for the Eagles was a second rounder. He was not a first rounder. Fant was a first rounder though, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, no, that is.
I don't like. I like him, but he's like, if maybe he's the. I don't want to say he's maybe like the sixth top tight end type of thing.
Yeah, he wouldn't be. No, he doesn't break the top 5. I agree with that. He's good. He's not. He's kind of Kirk Cousins. Good, not great at his position.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what do we? So we're thinking Philly's receivers 6 then? Is that what the?
I was thinking Seattle, but it's up to you guys.
Or Seattle. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, Seattle's wide receiver.
Well, what do you? All right, let's go around. I say Mike's. All right, Mike says Seattle. I say I take Seattle's over the Eagles. I just like what Casey was saying. Like, you got a deep threat guy, you got a guy who can do it all, and then if JSN is what he's supposed to be, pretty much one of the best slot receivers to come in the league in a long time, that mix is crazy to me.
You would take Seattle's receivers over Phillies?
Over Phillies, I think I do personally.
That's tough.
If we're talking about 3 wideouts, Jamie may have a legitimate case,
right,
but
absolutely, because the Eagles don't have that legit 3, but
yeah,
the Eagles have a
Quez
legit tight end to go
Yes.
along with
but I don't think
stalwart wide receivers.
Yeah, it's fair. It's really close to me, but I like DK a lot. I think he's obviously his values came down a little bit, especially last year. It kind of came back a little bit. But I mean, that guy's. Would you still
almost
6'4", 250? Runs a 4.4?
Would you put DK Metcalf and AJ Brown as like the same type of wide receiver?
Yeah.
Yeah, the style is. I mean, DK Metcalf's like the Incredible Hulk, for receivers. But
DK's more of an athletic freak than AJ Brown, but I would probably have to say AJ Brown over DK from like a talent.
I agree. I would agree with that.
But I would also, at this point, I'd also say I'd rather have Smith for sure over Lockett.
Yeah, and that's where I think it comes down to. Quez Watkins gets beat out easily by JSN. I think we can all agree on that if he lives up to his potential. But I just think Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, my God, they're too good. They might be.
It's tough.
They're so good as a duo. They're right up there.
You're right. All right, I see. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna put Seattle here because I think both of you two, you're Eagles, right?
Yeah,
that's what's good about having 3 of us on here. All right, so we got them. So now I think we come back to this wide receiver thing. I have to agree with Mike where I think I put this defensive line above the Eagles, and I think I put them number 3, to be honest.
That defensive line, if Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith turn out,
yes,
that is those 2 by themselves are scary. Plus the names we didn't even get to mention in there with Josh Sweat, but the other names that are in there, it's like that is just a scary defensive.
And you got Jordan Davis, who's considered one of the better nose tackle type of defensive tackle that have came out in years, and then you have Jalen Carter, who is known as one of the best 3 tech pass rushing type of.
Didn't the Eagles were the Eagles ones that drafted Nakobe Dean last year too?
Yes, yeah, it's the meme now. It's the running joke with Philly, the Philadelphia Bulldogs. Yeah, they drafted Ringo too.
Yeah,
dude, it's
right.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And why not? One of the top defenses in college football. Like, that's what you do, you know?
Hey, hopefully Lewis Cine, please live up to the hype the rest of them have from Georgia, please.
The best one out of all of them for sure.
Right.
We all know that.
So okay. So you're thinking Philly's the receivers and then the defense.
I'm thinking between Philly's receivers and Detroit's offensive line right now.
I'd rather go Detroit's offensive line ahead of Philly's receivers. I'd rather go Philly's receivers here. Personally, Detroit's O-line is just so nasty. It's so nasty,
and they're young. That's the biggest thing. It's a young, up and coming. It's. I think this really does play into the whole Casey's a closeted Lions fan thing, but like I think this has the opportunity to be that next Dallas Cowboys offensive line.
You're not wrong.
It's ridiculous. Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker at tackle is like you have two stalwart tackles, and you have a guy in the middle in Ragnar who's solid. Like it's just there's too many good offensive linemen on that team.
Right. Before going any further, let's listen to Justin hit that like button, everybody. Hashtag skol to win this Justin Jefferson rookie card, just like Justin Lasik and Don Kedick. Justin, I just sent out your Delvin Cook card as well, so that should be getting there pretty quick here. So hashtag skol is in the comments. Like the video and subscribe to our channels. Everything is in the description below. And I just like Michael, I just smashed the like button.
12 viewers in here right now and only 9 likes. So 3 of you
at least
aren't holding up your part. Where is JD to tell everybody what they should be doing? He's always the guy that says, hit the like button, JD, don't steal.
He's in here watching. JD, we're calling you out right now.
And if you're not, get in here and call other people out for
us. So back to this. So we're thinking Eagles wide receiver, number 5.
Yes. Just because Quez Watkins is the same problem with the Dolphins at 10, where Cedric Wilson is definitely not as prolific as Watkins has been, but he's not a game-changing wide receiver 3.
Yeah. Going on, Skol TY. Thanks for hopping in.
Hey, there he is. What's going on, Skol TY? What is going on? You already know what to do. So just a recap so far. We're ranking our top 10 positions. Right now at 10, we put Miami's defensive backs at 10. We got the linebackers for the 49ers at 9. The Miami Dolphins wide receivers at 8. The Eagles offensive line at 7. The Seahawks wide receivers at 6. And the Eagles wide receivers at 5. And we are sitting here with the Lions offensive line, the Bengals wide receiver group, pass catcher group, the Vikings, of course, pass catcher group, and the Eagles defensive line. What are we thinking?
This comes down to linemen right here. I think the thing with the Lions offensive line is they're proven and you know what you have.
Yes.
That Eagles defensive front, there's so much potential. Like 2 years from now, 2 years from now, we might start this list out by putting that defensive front up at the top of this list and moving on from there. But
I don't know if I want to say that.
I love the Eagles negativity there. I appreciate it.
Maybe number 2, you know.
By the way, this is a tough one, and I think this could almost be where you're at like a 3A, 3B type deal here, just because both of these positional groups are solid.
You're taking a group that was already one of the best positional groups last year, minus Hargraves now, and you add 2 of the top players, defensive lineman type of players in the entire draft, including Jalen Carter, who's like generational. I gotta go with Eagles defensive line over Lions,
offensive
in my
line
opinion.
Yeah, I can see that because I don't know. It is tough. It is tough because you look at the wide receivers in the Bengals. Their quarterback Joe Burrow never had an offensive line. Still almost made it to 2 consecutive Super Bowls. But you could say a big reason he didn't win a Super Bowl or make it to 2 consecutive Super Bowls was because he had no offensive line. But obviously, that's the thing. If you have no offensive line, then that defensive front gets to you quicker. So it is tough. So, but Jamie, I think I do agree with you here. I would go offensive line and defensive line ahead of that.
So who are you prioritizing there,
thinking-
Casey?
I'm saying the Eagles' defensive line's above the Lions. So I would put the
Okay.
Lions at 4 and the defensive line for the Eagles at 3.
I would have actually put the Lions over, but it doesn't matter. So you guys trump me.
Yeah, we'll do the 2v3 or 2 out of 3 on this one. I think like what Casey said, I hate it, but man, their defensive, it's scary. I hope they are bust, like Sarah says. Hopefully they're all bust because we need it to happen.
Let's listen to Justin down here. 797, 3 more. Let's get 800 tonight. If you're not subscribed, please do. Tell your friends. You won't regret it.
And we still are. If you need to make some new YouTube pages just to come and subscribe. I know Sarah tried it already and it wasn't really working for her. You might have to download. I know it's asking a lot, but just please download a VPN and then use that. Change your location to a different country and then come back and subscribe to our channel on that new YouTube page. It's easy. It's fast.
We could, because if it wasn't for YouTube being that way, we could have 20 more right now. But I guess YouTube didn't like that idea.
I know we all lost 20 from that one from our draft day video.
But what do you do?
Of course, don't forget to also go and check out MikedUp Podcast and subscribe there. That is also right in the description below as well.
I just want to mention this I forgot to mention this earlier, but since Sarah's here, she left a comment which I really appreciated on one of my more recent videos to do a Vikings all-time list, and I did that, Sarah. So if you want to go check that out, it's up now. It's been on the channel for a couple of days now, so please check it out. Leave a comment down below what other video you like to see, Sarah. I'd appreciate it.
Let's do it, Sarah. Sarah's it, man. Sarah is it. We love Sarah here.
Right.
Everybody here, man. You guys are killing.
I think the top 2 is pretty easy from here on out.
This has got to be one of the biggest discussions in all of NFL, not from all positional groups, but for these 2 specifically coming from LSU. Obviously, one has a better quarterback than the other. What are we thinking here, boys?
I mean, just because this is a Vikings podcast,
not just because it's a Vikings podcast. This has nothing to do with it.
You got to put the Vikings at 1. But man, it's tough because like you said, you have Justin Jefferson, who's far and away, I'd say the best receiver in football. We all know that.
Yes.
But then after that, you have unproven. You have a rookie in Jordan Addison, who we think is going to be a solid wide receiver too. You have KJ Osborne, who we hope can be wide receiver 2, but is definitely a solid wide receiver 3. You have Jalen Naylor, who we hope can be a good deep threat wide receiver on this team, of Tyler Lockett type, if you will. And then of course you have TJ Hawkinson at tight end. But man, you look at the Bengals top 3 receivers. I will take Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase every day and twice on Saturday. Whatever the hell.
Yes.
But T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd rounding out that top 3 wide, like those 3 wide receivers. That's hard. That is hard.
But you got to start. So what do you? Because obviously Addison now, you're hoping Addison, is going to be more of like a Higgins type guy. That's what we're hoping for. Obviously, they're different type of players, right? But we want
Higgins. We want tall.
Yeah, we want.
He's a giant. Yeah, he's big.
That talented. Yeah. And I mean, Higgins was a 2nd round pick. Addison's obviously 1st round pick. I thought he was the best wide receiver in this draft. So you have that with potential. And then besides that, I'm liking, and you have Tyler Boyd. And if you put up Tyler Boyd up against TJ Hawkinson, it's a TJ Hawkinson. I'm taking TJ Hawkinson over Boyd, obviously, as a player, in my opinion, for sure. And then you go down. I don't even know who would be the Bengals' 4th wide receiver. Obviously, we're digging deep here into 4th wide receiver.
The 4th wide receiver doesn't necessarily matter when you have.
Oh, we have KJ Osborne and Jalen Naylor, and I'm liking their potential.
But that's the thing. But with the Vikings receivers, you're talking about a lot of potential. With the Bengals wide receivers, there's no worry about potential. They have it.
For but what they don't have is the best wide receiver in the NFL.
Well, that is true though. That is true. That is very
and a top. I think which I think there's a chance Hawkinson is a top 3 tight end this season.
I agree.
I would say Hawkinson has a chance to be top 2 behind Travis Kelce, and Travis Kelce's getting old.
I think it's possible. I mean, if he was a Viking last year, I think
didn't do much until the second part of the season.
And Andrews fell off for the second half of the year.
He did. So I think Hawkinson has a chance to be the second best wide receiver in the league this year.
Or tight end. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean,
I just got to throw this out here because I got to just be unbiased. And maybe it's the MikedUp Podcast to me because I talk about the NFL all the time. I don't have a Viking-specific channel. I get Josh Harris as the best receiver, and I ain't having any other way. No, he is the number one receiver in the NFL. But is that trumped, though, by T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd as a trio? Because being unbiased, there were games people took JJ away because they said, screw it. The Vikings don't have a legit number two. We're going to bracket him. TJ will beat us in the middle of the field, but he's a tight end. He's not going to consistently pick up first downs that way. And that's what actually cost us in the Giants game. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about the 4th and 8 any more than that. But there's something to be said about that. And Cincinnati, that's why they're so good, even though they don't have a good O-line. They have someone's getting open almost every down.
And I said it since we drafted Jordan Addison that if we have Jordan Addison in the playoff game, we win because I think he finds.
I'd agree.
I think he finds a way to get open on 3rd and 8, and we don't even need to get to 4th and 8. You know, like you can cover JJ, but because KJ, that's the big thing with KJ. People said he likes to round off his routes and he's not like precise, and I think that's the big thing. Jordan Addison finds a way to get open past the sticks.
You know, if I wanted to be nitpicky and just even be a little bit of a savage, you can make the debate. Addison makes that catch that KJ dropped on 3rd and 8. And it wasn't a perfect pass. It was a little behind him, but it hit him in the hands. Cleanly, both in between both his hands. He could have caught it. Now, yes, Kirk admitted it. He should have thrown a better ball, but there's something to be said about if Jordan Addison can absolutely elevate this offense 100%. It's just potential, though. You know what I mean? That's where I just think the Bengals have us beat here. But that's just me.
Where did that Charlie Jones come out of?
What? Pardon?
Where did Charlie Jones come out of?
Purdue.
He got drafted this year, right? Purdue. Okay, that's what it was.
Purdue. I read this Naylor thing real quick. He ran a 4.5 at the combine, but apparently, he does seem way faster than that. But apparently, they're expecting him to have a sub 4.3 during that because they did say he ran a 4.29. It wasn't at his pro day or anything. I don't know if it was out of high school or what happened. People say he's done it, but it wasn't on any sort of, he also has like all kinds of state records for.
Yes, he was a track star. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think, I don't read into his 4.5 combine 40, but some people say he had a 4.29. So let's just roll with that.
If we did a race, he'd win it. Out of all the receivers, he'd win a straight line race. I truly do believe that.
Yeah, I do too. All right.
But so here's more like the weight really like. Is Justin Jefferson being the number one wide receiver in the league right now? Does that outweigh and potential of the others? Does that outweigh a proven commodity in Jamar Chase, who Jamar Chase in his own right is top 5, I think, if not even a little bit higher.
I think number 4, honestly, at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have Jamar Chase with 2 proven commodity wide receivers and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Where does the weight like how do you weigh this? That's the thing. It's hard.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know.
If we had a more known commodity at wide receiver 2, like what Thielen was just a couple years ago, this is no conversation in my mind. Yeah. But Cincinnati has 2 top 10 receivers. I just think that trumps it. That's just me, though. Just to you guys.
Next year, I think it's an
and
easy
they have
Vikings are number 1.
Best wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
So fuck. I hate not unbiased.
I hate not doing this. We went through all the unbiased opinions. Now be biased. Justin Jefferson, best receiver in the league. Put him at number 1. Bengals at number 2. That's the list.
Sorry, Joe.
Hey, if that's how the Super Bowl goes, we beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I don't see an issue with that. Yeah. So if we're gonna win a Super Bowl, guys, it's gonna be beating the Bills or the Bengals, a team that's more cursed than us. That's the way it's gonna go. We're not beating a team that's a dynasty of years past.
Whoa. Ooh, I don't know. I disagree.
No, absolutely not. No.
Tyler Boyd
Naylor's going to be.
Tyler Boyd is getting older for sure. Well, he's got to be and it's probably 30 now or something like
he's
that.
He's close to 30, yeah.
But man, like I said, name a better wide receiver 3. It's hard to do so.
You can't. Gabe Davis was maybe in Buffalo before, but now he's wide receiver 2 there because they didn't get another guy. So, no, I agree with you. No, and I want to say this since
Tyler Boyd's 28 years old.
For us Viking fans, we have a little bit of a bias sometimes where we do this. KJ Osborne, great story and all. It's really been, last year was a really nice season and all that good stuff. But like, let's not forget, just a couple years ago, he was nearly cut. Like, let's chill before saying he's better than Tyler Boyd. That's all I'm saying.
Tyler Boyd since 2018 will go yards, touchdowns. 1,028, 7. 1,046, 5. And then 2020, is 2020 when they picked up T. Higgins? Or 2020?
Yes, that sounds right.
And this is a time when they didn't really have quarterbacks either. 2020, 841, 4. 2021, 828, 5. And now this is with, now you include Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And then 2022, 762 and 5. Like,
and KJ didn't do that last year. KJ has never surpassed any of those numbers. Not once.
The QB. Well, in Boyd's defense here, Skol TY, is that he played well. He was like the number one wide receiver before Joe Burrow.
Yes.
He played well with Andy Dalton and with whatever the hell they threw in there after Andy Dalton left. Like,
either way, though, we're going off the potential of what our offense is going to be this year, and I think KJ is going to. I don't think he's going to beat Tyler Boyd. Should be at least he should be a wide receiver too right now on any team. I think KJ Osborne is going to prove to be a high-end wide receiver 3. I think Naylor might be able to prove that as well. And I think we're going to see a high-end wide receiver 2 out of Addison. And you have Justin Jefferson, who's number 1 receiver in the league, and a TJ Hawkinson, who's obviously a high-end tight end and could be top 3 in the entire NFL. No bias, so we're going with the Vikings. So here's our final list here. At 10, we gave is Miami's defensive backfield 9. 49ers linebackers 8, Miami's wide receivers 7, Eagles offensive line 6, Seahawks wide receivers 5, Eagles wide receivers 4, Detroit's offensive line 3, Eagles defensive line number 2, the Bengals wide receivers, and of course number 1, non-biased again, Vikings number 1 positional group in the NFL. Y'all heard it here, and you're gonna see it happen this season.